They thought loyalty was weakness. They thought my silence meant fear. What they didn't see was that I was watching, learning. When they cut me out, lied about me, tried to kill my career, they believed they'd already won. Because that's how cowards operate. They don't expect you to fight back. But here's the truth they never understood. I don't believe in rage. I don't believe in messy revenge. I believe in control. I believe in collecting every lie, every insult, every sabotage. I believe in waiting until they're certain they're safe, before I destroy the foundation they built on my back. So before we dive in, tell me something. Have you ever felt betrayed by people who smile to your face? Have you ever dreamed of making them answer for it? You're in the right place. Because this isn't just a story. It's a warning. This is how you turn their betrayal into your power. How you make them regret ever underestimating you. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Because this isn't just revenge. It's justice, delivered on my terms. I didn't start this job thinking I'd end someone's career. I just wanted to do good work. But you'd be amazed how fast an office can turn toxic when the wrong person is in charge. When I joined the engineering firm in Springfield, Missouri, I was optimistic. I had experience managing complex projects. My record was spotless, on time, under budget. Clients loved me. My first day, I met Frank Donovan. He was my new boss. He shook my hand like he was the king, and I was a peasant asking permission to exist. I felt the warning bells immediately. Tight smile, dead eyes. But I ignored them. We're professionals, right? At first it was subtle. He'd forget to invite me to meetings. When I confronted him, he'd shrug and say it must have been an oversight. But then I'd see the calendar invites. He'd marked me as optional, or excluded me completely. I brushed it off. Maybe he was testing me. Maybe he was just disorganized. I kept delivering on my projects. Clients started asking for me by name. That's when Frank's mood shifted from passive-aggressive to openly hostile. One morning, I walked in early and overheard him on the phone with a client. He was telling them I wasn't available for their project. My name, specifically. That wasn't true at all. When I confronted him later, he gaslighted me. Said I must have misunderstood. I tried to go to HR. Their response: "Can you two try to work it out?" They didn't want to get involved. No real investigation. They treated it like a petty squabble, ignoring all the evidence. It only got worse. Frank started taking credit for my work in front of senior management. He'd rephrase my ideas and pitch them as his own. He started hinting I was difficult or uncooperative when talking to others. I found out he was emailing HR with little complaints about me. I wasn't team-oriented, I didn't communicate well. All lies. But you can't fight rumors with feelings. I needed proof. I started documenting everything. Every meeting, every email, every time he left me out. I backed up files on a personal drive. I even took photos of whiteboards before he could erase them. I thought that might protect me. But Frank wasn't done yet. One afternoon, I got called into a meeting with HR and senior management. They had a folder in front of them with my name on it. Frank sat there with this smug little smile, like a snake waiting to strike. He accused me of project delays, poor communication, even costing the company money. He had evidence in the folder: project logs, emails, reports. Except I knew those logs had been changed. Falsified. I felt my stomach drop. I realized right then that this wasn't a misunderstanding. He wasn't incompetent. He was malicious. He was trying to destroy me. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to let him win. I sat there in that HR meeting, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Frank was laying it on thick, talking over me, showing his fake reports with these big red highlights, making it look like I'd screwed up timelines. I watched the HR rep nod along like a damn bobblehead. He even used that condescending tone: "We're just concerned about Emily's ability to handle complex projects. She seems overwhelmed." Overwhelmed? I wanted to scream. He was the reason half my days were spent cleaning up the mess he made when he blocked me from doing my job. But I didn't lose it. I forced myself to stay calm. I asked them for specifics. He pulled out more papers, waved them around, said I'd cost the company thousands. I recognized the spreadsheet. It was mine. Except the numbers were different. I felt sick. I realized in that moment he'd gone all in. He'd committed to ruining me on paper. If HR bought it, I'd be fired. Maybe blacklisted. Who would hire someone with a record of gross mismanagement? Our eyes flicked to me, cold. Do you have anything to say in response? I swallowed hard. I didn't want to tip my hand yet. I just said, I'd like to review all of these materials in detail. Frank interrupted. That's unnecessary. She knows what she did. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I clenched my teeth and said nothing. They ended the meeting with a promise to follow up. Frank sauntered out like a man who just closed a deal. He even gave me this little wink. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table scrolling through my folders, checking every backup. My partner asked me what was wrong. I couldn't even answer. How do you explain that your boss is framing you for incompetence and you might lose everything you've worked for? By morning, I was done crying. I was furious. I printed every email where he excluded me from meetings. Every time a client asked for me by name. I backed up the original project logs with the correct dates. I made 3 copies, one on a flash drive, one in the cloud, one printed and bound. HR wanted a war? Fine. The next day, Frank tried to act like nothing happened. He was smiling at me in the break room. Morning, Emily. I didn't answer. I just walked past him. I could feel his eyes on my back, but I refused to look. He stopped inviting me to meetings entirely. He started emailing clients without me, messing up details I had fixed weeks before. And every time something went wrong, he'd blame me in writing. I kept it all. He even tried to buddy up to my teammates, spreading little rumors that I wasn't coping well, that I was emotional, that I might be unstable. I'd catch people glancing at me with pity or suspicion. My blood boiled. And then it happened. An email from our biggest client. They'd specifically asked for me on their next project. They demanded me. Frank tried to intercept it. He replied without CCing me, saying I was unavailable due to performance concerns. But he messed up. He forgot to remove me from the thread entirely. I opened my inbox and read his lie in black and white. My heart raced. This was it. I finally had him. I stared at that email, barely breathing. Frank had responded to our most important client, the one who personally asked for me, and told them I was unavailable due to performance concerns. He didn't even try to make it subtle. He flat out lied. And the idiot left me CC'd. I remember the feeling in my chest. It wasn't panic anymore. It was something colder, steadier. I forwarded the thread to myself, saved it in 3 places, and then sat back in my chair. Everyone around me kept typing, chatting, answering phones. But to me, the office suddenly felt like a stage, and everyone was just playing their parts. I had finally seen behind the curtain. This wasn't just rivalry. Frank was trying to erase me. By lunchtime, word had gotten around. A few people had seen the thread, and I could feel the shift. Some co-workers who had been friendly started keeping their heads down. One whispered to me in the kitchen, "You should be careful, Emily." I just nodded. Careful wasn't going to save me now. That afternoon, I met the client's project liaison, Jessica Reed, for a quick Zoom call. She looked confused. "I thought you were leading this. We requested you directly." I smiled calmly. That's what I understood too. Jessica frowned. "Frank said you weren't available, that there were issues." I felt the heat rise in my face, but I kept my voice even. I think there's been a miscommunication. I'm happy to clarify anything you need." She paused. "We'll be following up internally." By the next day, the client had emailed senior leadership questioning why I was removed. They copied me and my department VP. That was the second crack in Frank's wall. Later that week, I caught Frank talking to HR in the hallway, just far enough to pretend it was casual, but close enough to hear my name. He glanced at me like I was an ant under his shoe. I didn't react. I just smiled. Then came the part that nearly broke me. HR called me into another informal conversation. The same rep, Sandra, sat across from me with that tired, corporate expression. "We've been hearing concerns about your performance. This is your second client issue in less than a month." I blinked. Client issue. Sandra slid a paper across the table. It was a summary, written by Frank, outlining communication breakdowns, project management delays, and concerns about attitude. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was so absurd. "This is all false," I said. She folded her hands. "Do you have any evidence to the contrary?" I opened my bag and pulled out a manila folder. "Yes, I do." She looked surprised when I started laying it all out. Emails, calendar invites, the original project logs with timestamps. And finally, that client email thread where Frank lied. Sandra didn't say a word. She just kept flipping through the papers. I sat back and crossed my arms. "And just so you know, I've saved everything. This is just a copy." She nodded slowly. "We'll need to investigate." I stood up. "I'll wait." When I got back to my desk, Frank wasn't there. His chair was empty. That was rare. I half expected him to stroll in with that smug little smirk, but he didn't. Instead, Mark, one of my few remaining allies in the office, leaned over and whispered, "They just called Frank into a meeting upstairs." I didn't say a word. I just opened my laptop and kept working. Hours passed. Frank didn't come back. The next morning, he walked in late. No smile. No greeting. Just quiet, angry silence. For the first time, he looked scared. That's when I knew the tide had turned. That morning was the first time I'd ever seen Frank rattled. He barely made eye contact with anyone. No fake cheer, no patronizing jokes, just this grim set to his jaw as he marched straight into his office and shut the door. I sat at my desk, watching his door like it was the final boss level in a video game. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt exhausted. I'd spent weeks living like this, afraid to open my email, afraid of what lie he'd cooked up next. My shoulders were permanently tight. I wasn't sleeping. My partner had started tiptoeing around me at home, not sure what would set me off. And now, even with the evidence stacked in my favor, it wasn't over. HR had promised an investigation. But they were slow, careful, afraid of being sued. Meanwhile, I still had to come in every day and sit 20 feet away from the man who tried to destroy me. And he wasn't giving up either. He stopped talking to me completely. Wouldn't even acknowledge my presence in meetings. When clients emailed both of us, he replied only to them. I watched him scramble to manage my projects without including me, making mistakes I'd warned him about months ago. When something blew up, he blamed me. He actually CC'd HR on one of those emails. Emily seems to be withholding critical information. This is unacceptable. I remember reading it at my desk and feeling my vision blur with rage. I didn't even reply. I just added it to my growing evidence folder. But it wasn't just about work anymore. He'd gotten inside my head. I found myself second-guessing everything, rereading emails 10 times before sending them, avoiding the break room because I didn't want to see the pity or the suspicion in people's eyes. One night, I broke down in my car before driving home. Just sat there crying, gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember why I was even fighting. Why not just quit? Find another job. Start over somewhere I wasn't branded as difficult. Somewhere I didn't have to look over my shoulder every day. But then I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late fixing his messes, the relationships I'd built with our clients, the praise I'd gotten before he arrived. I thought about Jessica, our client contact, emailing leadership to demand I stay on their account. And I thought about Frank's smug little smile in that first HR meeting. He wasn't just trying to fire me. He was trying to rewrite the story. Make it so I was the problem. So even if I left, I'd carry that stain with me forever. I couldn't let him win. So I came back the next day, sat at my desk, opened my emails, documented everything. And then something happened I didn't expect. Mark, the co-worker who'd warned me about Frank's meeting, stopped by my desk. He looked nervous. Hey, I know it's not really my place, but I just wanted you to know. HR talked to me yesterday. My heart stopped. About what? About you. About Frank. They asked if I'd ever seen you act unprofessional. I swallowed hard. And he hesitated, then let out a breath. I told them the truth. That you're the only reason half of these projects didn't implode. That has been sabotaging you since day one. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded quickly. I don't think it's right. What he's trying to do to you. When he walked away, I stared at my screen, breathing hard. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. People saw what was happening. Frank wasn't going to get away with it. I was going to make sure of that. After Mark told me what he'd said to HR, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Because the truth is, I'd started to think I was losing my mind. That maybe I was the problem. That's what Frank was counting on. Gaslighting works best when the victim starts doing the work for you. But hearing someone else say it out loud, that he saw what Frank was doing, it snapped me out of it. I wasn't crazy. Frank was sabotaging me. And now HR knew it wasn't just my word against his. But I also knew Frank wouldn't go down without a fight. He was smart in that corporate weasel kind of way. He'd spent weeks laying the groundwork, hinting I was emotional, unstable, hard to work with. It wouldn't take much for HR to say the situation was complicated and sweep it under the rug. So I doubled down. Every day I showed up early, logged every call, saved every email. When clients praised me, I documented it. When Frank contradicted himself in writing, like saying I was excluded from meetings for clarity while simultaneously blaming me for lack of communication, I highlighted it. I built a timeline. It was damning. Meanwhile, Frank seemed to sense things slipping. He stopped talking to HR in hushed tones and started raising his voice. I heard him in the hall one day snapping at Sandra. I've told you, she's incompetent. She's trying to sabotage me. I didn't even flinch. I just wrote it down. Clients kept emailing leadership, questioning why I wasn't leading their projects. Jessica, our biggest client contact, was furious. She refused to talk to Frank at all. Senior management started paying attention. One morning, I was called into a meeting with Bob, our department VP. I remember my heart racing as I walked down the hall. I didn't know if this was it, if they were going to fire me, or finally listen. Bob didn't waste time. Emily, he said, steepling his fingers. I want to hear your side of this. I laid it all out. The sabotage, the meeting exclusions, the falsified project logs, the client complaints. I handed over my folder. He flipped through it, silent. When he got to the email where Frank lied to the client about me being unavailable, he frowned. Did you respond to this? I shook my head. I wanted you to see it first. He kept reading. When he finally looked up, his expression wasn't angry. It was disappointed. In all my years here, he said slowly, I've never seen anything like this. I didn't say a word. My throat was tight. He nodded once. Thank you. We'll handle it from here. When I left the room, I felt like I was floating. Not because it was over, but because someone finally believed me. That afternoon, Frank was called into the same conference room. He didn't come out for over an hour. When he did, his face was pale. He wouldn't even look at me. Later, HR sent an email to the entire department announcing an internal review of management practices. It was corporate speak, but everyone knew what it meant. I went home that night and actually slept. For the first time in weeks, I dreamed about nothing. Just black, peaceful silence. But I also knew it wasn't over. Frank still had friends in the company. People who liked his tough guy routine, who thought I was overreacting. HR was still cautious. They wanted to avoid lawsuits. I had my evidence, but I needed allies. So the next morning, I did something that surprised even me. I walked into the office, looked at Mark, and said, "Thank you for backing me up. I won't forget it." He smiled, relieved. Then I started talking to others. Carefully, honestly. I didn't trash Frank. I just explained what had happened. Showed them what I could, without breaking policy. And you know what? They listened. Because deep down, they'd seen it too. And the tide was turning. I'll never forget that week. The office felt like it was holding its breath. Frank was still coming in every day, but he was a different man. The booming laugh, gone. The smug confidence, gone. He barely spoke unless he had to. He still tried to act like the boss, snapping at people over tiny things. But no one jumped anymore. Everyone was watching him too carefully. Meanwhile, our internal review was in full swing. Sandra, the HR rep who'd been so dismissive before, was suddenly professional to the point of robotic. She scheduled formal interviews with everyone on the team. Mark told me later they asked him everything. What did Frank say about Emily? Did you see him exclude her? Do you have any emails? And Mark wasn't the only one. Lewis from IT got pulled in too. He was quiet, but sharp. He'd always seemed neutral in office politics. But one afternoon I got an email from him. "Emily, just FYI, I've been asked about the project logs. I have the server backups. Don't worry. I'm telling them what I found." I actually laughed when I read it. Relief. Gratitude. Because that was the ace in the hole. Frank had altered the logs to make it look like I was late on deliverables. But the server didn't lie. Lewis had the originals. I sat at my desk and exhaled, slow and deep. Frank had to know the walls were closing in. He tried one last trick. He sent this grandiose, self-pitying email to the department VP and HR, CCing half the management team. In it he claimed he was being targeted, that certain staff were undermining his authority, and that the false accusations against him were making it impossible to manage effectively. He didn't name me directly, but everyone knew. I read it, shaking my head. I didn't reply. Didn't have to. Bob, the VP, sent back the coldest, most professional response I'd ever seen. "Thank you for your input. Please refrain from further communication on this matter until the investigation is complete." That was it. Frank didn't send another department-wide email after that. HR called me in for one last meeting. Sandra sat there with a folder. She looked different. No more eye-rolling, no more corporate platitudes. "Emily, we've reviewed all of the evidence," she said, "including your documentation. We also received the server logs from IT." She paused, glancing at me. "I want to be clear, we take this seriously." My heart thudded. She went on. "At this stage, Frank is being placed on administrative leave pending final disciplinary action. This is confidential, of course, but you won't be reporting to him effective immediately. I felt dizzy. It was happening. Sandra cleared her throat. We're also going to formally clear your record. There will be no notations of any performance issues. I almost laughed. Instead, I just said, "Thank you." She actually looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry it got this far." I nodded. I didn't say it, but I was thinking it. You let it get this far. I walked out of that meeting with my head held higher than it had been in weeks. And then I did something I'd been waiting to do. I emailed Jessica, the client who demanded me. "Hi Jessica, just wanted to confirm I'll be taking over as project lead effective immediately. Looking forward to working with you again." She replied within minutes. "Emily, that's fantastic news." Frank didn't show up the next day, or the day after. The rumor mill churned non-stop. Some people were stunned. Others looked relieved. Me, I just kept doing my job. I made sure the clients were happy. I supported my team. I stayed late if I needed to. Because while HR was wrapping up their investigation, I was already planning the next step. Frank might lose his job, but I wasn't going to stop there. I wanted to make sure he could never do this to anyone else. I remember the day HR made it official. Frank was fired. They didn't announce it, of course. They don't do that in corporate America. Instead, there was just silence. His name disappeared from the org chart. His email auto-replied with a generic message about no longer with the company. But everyone knew. I watched his office get cleaned out. A young HR assistant boxed up his stuff. No ceremony. No goodbye cake. Just a cardboard box of personal junk, a cheap diploma frame, a few pens, a photo of a family I'd never seen him mention. He didn't even have the guts to come back and get it himself. Word spread fast. People tiptoed around me at first, like they didn't know how to act. A couple whispered congrats like it was some kind of promotion, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt relieved, vindicated, but mostly I felt angry, because I'd spent weeks being treated like a problem, like I was overreacting, like I was imagining things. And if I hadn't documented everything, if I hadn't been willing to sit through humiliating meetings, if I hadn't stayed up late organizing files, he would have won. He would have blackened my name and moved on to do it to someone else. I couldn't let that happen. So I didn't stop with getting him fired. After HR finished their investigation, I requested a copy of the formal finding. They wouldn't give me the internal notes, privacy laws, but they did confirm in writing that Frank had engaged in falsification of records and inappropriate exclusion of team members from essential communication. It was corporate speak for "he lied and tried to ruin your career." I saved that letter. Then I started making calls. I'd always been active in our professional association. PMI chapter, local engineering groups, you name it. Frank was too. He liked to network. It made him look important. I sent polite but clear notes to those groups. Nothing defamatory, just the facts. Wanted to inform you that our firm recently concluded an investigation that found misconduct involving falsification of project records. Given that Frank Donovan was a member here, I thought the board would want to know. I got a few stunned replies. A couple of them said they'd be updating their membership roles. One local group blacklisted him outright. Meanwhile, I found out he'd been trying to apply to other firms. Small industry. Word travels. He'd been shortlisted for at least one management role, until someone called our HR for a reference. I don't know exactly what they said, but he didn't get the job. I'd done my part to make sure there was a paper trail that followed him, because that's what he wanted for me. I wasn't going to lie. I wasn't going to embellish. But I wasn't going to let him rewrite history, either. It was about more than revenge. It was about justice. A few weeks later, Bob, the VP, called me into his office. He didn't waste time. "Emily, you've done exceptional work throughout this entire process. You kept the client on board, you kept your projects moving, and you showed remarkable professionalism under pressure." I swallowed hard. He smiled. "We'd like you to take Frank's role." I blinked. Project management lead. His salary. His team. My name on the door. I tried to play it cool, but inside I was shaking. "Yes," I said. "I'd be honored." He nodded. "Good. We'll announce it next week." When I left his office, I felt 10 feet tall. Because I hadn't just survived. I'd won. But the best part was yet to come. The day they moved me into Frank's old office. I walked in, shut the door, and sat in his chair. And for the first time since he'd started this war, I let myself really smile. I remembered him packing his box. I remembered him trying not to look at me. And I thought, this is what accountability looks like. But even then, I wasn't done. Because I still had one last thing to say to him. I remember my first morning in that office. Frank's old office. I came in early, coffee in hand, closed the door behind me, sat in his chair. It was so quiet. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next attack. No passive-aggressive email. No bullshit HR meeting. No fake just checking in to see if he could catch me off guard. Just me. I spun once in the chair like a kid. Couldn't help myself. Then I got to work. My first move was to call the team in for a meeting. Mark was there. So was Lewis. Even Sandra from HR sat in. Everyone looked a little nervous. They didn't know what kind of boss I'd be. So I told them the truth. I know it's been a rough few months. I want to acknowledge that. Frank created a toxic environment. He hurt a lot of us. But that's over. It ends now. If you work with me, you'll be respected. You'll be heard. And I'll fight for you like I fought for myself. You could feel the tension drain out of the room. Lewis cracked a small smile. Mark actually applauded once and then stopped, embarrassed. We all laughed. After that meeting, I dove into the client work. I called Jessica, our biggest account contact, personally. "I wanted you to hear it from me," I said. "I'm leading your projects now." She let out this relieved little laugh. "Thank God," she said. "We almost pulled our contract." I felt a weight lift off my chest. We were keeping the business. Because of me. A week later, our department VP, Bob, took me aside. "I just want you to know," he said, "you handle this better than most people twice your age would have. I'm proud to have you on my leadership team." That almost made me tear up. Because for weeks I'd felt worthless. Disposable. Now here I was. The one they trusted to clean up the mess. I didn't waste time, either. I started mentoring the junior staff Frank used to bully. Gave them real feedback. Helped them get certifications. I made sure no one felt alone the way I had. And HR? They started revising the company's complaint process. Sandra even asked me to review their new policy drafts. Talk about irony. I became the face of the change. But there was still one last thing. I had Frank's personal email. We'd been forced to share it for client emergencies. After everything settled down, I sat at my new desk and composed one short message. "Frank, you tried to break me. I'm still here. I hope you learned something. Emily." I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. I just wanted him to know I hadn't forgotten. That I never would. And then I deleted his contact from my address book. Closed that chapter for good. Because revenge isn't always about ruining someone's life. Sometimes it's about making sure they can't ruin yours. It's about standing up so they know you won't fall again. It's about making the people who doubted you see you. And making sure the next time someone tries what Frank did, they think twice. So yeah, this was my story. The lies. The sabotage. The humiliation they thought I'd swallow in silence. And the plan I built, piece by piece, until they had nowhere left to hide. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. It sure as hell wasn't clean. But it worked. Because real revenge isn't about screaming in their face. It's about making them watch as you take back everything they tried to steal from you, and then some. It's about showing them you were never the weak one. So if you've ever been betrayed, lied about, set up to fail, just remember, you don't have to stay the victim in their story. You can write your own ending. If you want more true revenge stories like this, real plans, real wins, real accountability, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell from Revenge-ActionTV. Because we're just getting started.